Hey, I'm Randy Akers with Georgetown County Parks and Recreation, and welcome to another episode of The Parent's Guide to Video Games. In today's video, we're going to talk about what is my personal favorite video game series of all time, The Legend of Zelda. Now, The Legend of Zelda is typically an open-world game, which we already touched on a little bit when we talked about Minecraft, and if you missed that video, you should definitely check it out. The reason I wanted to talk about The Legend of Zelda specifically is that it was a Zelda game that really sold me on the potential for video games to make a positive impact in people's lives. The first Zelda game I can really recall having a lot of fun with was The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. The story of most Zelda games is pretty similar, with some minor differences from game to game, and it's a story you've probably heard before. A princess, Zelda, is in trouble, having been captured by an evil man usually named Ganon. It's up to the young swordsman, Link, to save her. Throughout the course of each game, Link usually gains more progressively powerful items like swords, slingshots, and boomerangs in order to help him defeat the evil, save the princess, and win the day. What has consistently set Zelda games apart from other games, however, is their lack of insistence on forcing the player to do a certain thing in a certain way or by a certain time. Over the course of time, Zelda games have been transformative moments in the video game industry, both innovating what games can do, as well as, with its most recent iteration, Breath of the Wild, elevating video games to a point where they're nearly indistinguishable from art. The original Zelda game for the first Nintendo system was also one of the first games that did not force the player to complete the game in a linear fashion, and was also the very first game to feature a save functionality, which would allow you to save your progress and resume the game at a later point in time. Later, Nintendo would revolutionize the video gaming industry again with The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, which was released about 20 years ago and is still cited as one of the best video games of all time. Zelda games are the only games we'll talk about in this series that are designed to be played by one player. As you make your way through the various worlds that these games present to you, you can complete the tasks they have in store for you as quickly or as leisurely as you wish, and in any order that you wish, just about. Since each world has been overtaken by an evil force, you'll typically encounter some monsters along the way, some of which are scarier than others. For example, in Ocarina of Time, which was released in the late 90s, there's an enemy called a Re-Dead, which is basically a zombie that kind of freezes you in place as it slowly moves towards you menacingly. And it makes a very scary sound as well. That can be scary for some younger kids, but it's just about as scary as most Zelda games get. It's important to note that all but a few Zelda games have been given a rating of everyone 10+ by the Entertainment Software Rating Board, which means that they're suitable for any child which is aged 10 or older. If your child is younger than 10 years old, the games may not be suitable for them. Finally, let's talk about the cost. Since Zelda is only available on a Nintendo console, you will need a Nintendo gaming system to play it. Manufacturer's suggested retail price of a Nintendo Switch Lite at the time of the posting of this video is about $200. MSRP of the most recent Zelda game, Breath of the Wild, is still about $60 despite the game having been released about 3 years ago. There's also additional downloadable content for this game, which will cost about another $20. If you add all that together, you'll be looking at $280 before taxes in order to play the most recent Zelda game. Unlike Fortnite and Minecraft, there are no additional cosmetic items available for purchase for this game, so once you've got the game and all its downloadable content, you'll be set. Now let's take a look at some gameplay from the original Legend of Zelda game from all the way back in 1986. Alright, so here we are in the original Nintendo Legend of Zelda from the 1980s. For most of you, this is probably what you think of when you think of a video game. It's obviously pretty simple, graphically and design-wise. For the time, it was very advanced. But it's the basic introduction to the Legend of Zelda franchise. You are a character running around a pretty much limitless open world. You fight some monsters along the way. You get some items, you get some help from various people and other creatures such as fairies. They'll help you power up and be better able to take on the monsters that you see on the screen right now. We're not going to go too far into this game, just kind of wanted to show you this as a point of reference for where The Legend of Zelda started, so you can understand a little bit better where it's gone since the 1980s. And now, let's bring it a little further forward in time and show you some gameplay from the most recent Zelda game, Breath of the Wild. And now here we are in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is obviously a much more modern game than the one we just saw. The opening is almost cinematic. It's almost like you're watching a movie. In fact, the first minute or so of the game is pretty much a cutscene where you're waking up from a very long sleep. We'll go ahead and play some of that for you right now.
Open your eyes.
So in this game, your character Link has been asleep for 100 years. A great calamity happened. Unfortunately, the first time around, they lost the battle, and they had to put Link in a 100-year slumber so he could basically rest up and come back and win the day in the future.
You are the light. Our light. That must shine upon Hyrule once again.
Now, once you've gone through the very opening tutorial of the game, you kind of leave the starting area, and you'll see how cinematic this game really is. So again, this is kind of what I'm talking about when I say that video games like this are becoming indistinguishable from art. You have this gigantic open world that's filled with some ruins like what you're seeing here on the screen, but it's also filled with life as well. And each area has music that accompanies it to kind of set the mood for that area. It's sometimes slow piano music like what you're hearing right now. Sometimes it's a little faster. There's also, just like the first game, there's monsters in the game. So you can sneak up on them and take them out like you're seeing right here. You can go full bore at them and you can just charge in, bow and arrow blazing, however you want to handle it. And this is just to give you another example of exactly how massive this world really is. You're still in the starting area of the game here, but you can see it's just an entirely large and massive world, which you can get around a lot more quickly on if you ride on a horse. This is another area of the game that is not even towards the very edge of the map. It's just so large that you have to use things like horses, or the game does have a fast travel mechanic where you can basically teleport to another area to get from one side of the map to another much more quickly. And you can see it's just a very beautifully designed game, both in terms of the visuals and the music. And this is kind of what it looks like at night as well. But that thing next to us we want to take a special close look at, called the cooking pot, because you do in this game sometimes need to eat food or drink an elixir to help yourself advance. So what we're going to do is we're going to cook some food real quick, just to show you how that mechanic works. So it's not all fighting monsters and, riding on horses. It's just peaceful stuff like this, like just cooking some food. So we're going to get some meat, some mushrooms, and then let's see here. I think we'll just use this herb here as well. This stuff over here we can't use with the food. That's for elixirs. We'll get into that in just a second. And there's also some other uses for it as well, but you can't use it with the food. So we're going to go ahead and cook this food up real quick. Throw it in the pot here. And there you have it. You got yourself some food. So now let's talk a little bit about elixirs. As we were just saying, the insects and stuff you can't eat, but you can use to make elixirs. So we're going to make an elixir that's going to help keep us warm in a cold area of the game. We're going to use this butterfly that has a warming effect. We're also going to use some monster parts from some of the monsters that we have taken out in this game. These monster parts are used in elixirs to varying degrees. They can enhance the effect of an elixir in terms of the length of time that it takes for the elixir to wear off, things like that. So we're just going to gather a few ingredients here, then we're going to throw those in the cooking pot. And of course, higher tier monsters or higher difficulty monsters of defeating have better effects. Like, for example, that sound means that we've made something really good. In fact, you see we've got a 14-minute and 50-second spicy elixir, which is going to grant us some resistance to cold. And that's a very good elixir for this stage of the game. We're still pretty early in the game, but that's very good for us. And as I was mentioning, this world is also pretty full of life. You can meet some non-playable characters wandering around the world that will have things to tell you. For example, this guy is telling us about how he saw all the towers and the shrines pop out of the ground. And in fact, we're going to go ahead and take a look inside a shrine real quick to show you what that's like. This is like that classic Legend of Zelda puzzle-solving mechanic that you may have heard of. This one's a pretty simple one. Basically, all we have to do is use this wind tunnel here to glide across this big open space, and then to the end of the shrine to get our reward. Each shrine does have a unique puzzle inside, but at the end you do get the same reward, which is given to you by this mummy-looking guy right here. It's called a spirit orb. And he's going to tell you that you've done a great job, and that you're a hero, and he's going to give you the spirit orb, which you can then trade in to increase both the amount of hearts you have, as well as the amount of stamina you have for things like climbing mountains or running in this game. And there you go, we've gotten our reward for completing the puzzle, completing the shrine. And he tells us to go about our business, go on our way. And of course, there are other monsters in the game that are a little bit more difficult than the ones you saw earlier, called Guardians. These Guardians are basically machines that have been taken over by the evil force in the world, and they basically shoot lasers at you. They can be either difficult or easy to defeat depending on your experience with the game. We're going to show you the easiest way to defeat them, which is basically just to reflect their own lasers back at them. As you can hear, the music is just as integral a part of this experience as seeing the monster. That piano intro that lets you know that something serious is about to happen. There you see we reflected his laser back at him. Oh, he broke our shield there, so gotta get a new shield. So you could fight this guy with a sword, or you could just reflect the lasers back at him. You know, it's all up to how experienced you are with the game, or how you want to take it, basically. Alright, so that's it for The Legend of Zelda. Hope this video has been helpful to you today. Just wanted to leave you with one quick clip of something else that's neat in the game. So now that you've seen how this game is played, let's go talk about what your child might be able to learn from it. So now that you've learned a little bit about what The Legend of Zelda is and seen how it's played, let's talk about what your child might be able to learn from these games. The first thing I think these games can teach kids is an appreciation for arts and music. If you notice through the course of the gameplay, the music is just as integral to the action as what you're seeing on the screen. Music from these games has become so popular that there is a touring symphony orchestra that goes all around the world playing music from The Legend of Zelda's games. Second, if you look at the visuals in the more modern game, Breath of the Wild, it's clear that a ton of design and artwork went into producing this game. With more and more video games going this route, looking as though they're indistinguishable from art in the modern era, It's clear that there will be opportunities for people to design more of these games in the future. Exposing your child to these games, especially if they already have an interest in art, could open them up to a lucrative career in the future. The second is task management. While The Legend of Zelda doesn't often force the player to complete a task or an assignment in a given period of time, it does quite often give the player a lot of tasks to complete. In Breath of the Wild, you can have 10 to 20 different quests going on at one time, and it's up to you to decide what order those quests will get done in. It's also up to you to decide if any of these quests is more important than another. These types of situational assessment and task management skills can easily be translated to real-life quests. The third is that there's sometimes more than one solution to a problem. As you saw in some of the gameplay from Breath of the Wild, there are multiple avenues you can take in that game to solve the same problem. For example, when defeating a group of enemies, you can either charge in and take them on head-on, or you can hang back and kind of sneakily take them out from afar. When solving one of the shrine puzzles, you can take the obvious route, or come up with a more creative solution. Creative problem solving is a skill that just about everyone can use and is exemplified by this game. Since Zelda is primarily a single-player game, you don't need to worry too much about them having a scary interaction with a stranger online, or being able to stop immediately if you need them to. However, as we've mentioned in the past couple of videos, it is typically a better tactic to try and give your child a warning or a window to stop rather than demanding that they stop immediately, so that they can have a moment to finish up what they're doing or make sure that their character is in a safe position so that they don't lose the hard work that they've put into the game. I hope this video has been helpful and has taught you some things that you might not have known about the Legend of Zelda series. Take some time to learn about what benefits your child might gain from playing games like this, even if I didn't mention those benefits here. As always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us on Facebook at GTCParks. I'll be back tomorrow with another video, and I look forward to seeing you then. Bye-bye.